been 5 years. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, a couple of years, yeah, since we first started this.
Amazing. Okay, we are live. Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On today's show, of a very special guest, a returning guest. His name is John DiGirolamo. His last name is spelled Digirolamo. This will be our third episode. We were talking the pre-show. I think the first show we did was back in 2021 over COVID. And he's just published a new book. If you're watching this on my 3 returned YouTube channels, X, Rumble, and now Substack, you'll see the full title. It's Not About the Broken Road, True Stories About Finding Gratitude and Joy in Life's Most Difficult Moments. And our other 2 episodes, I highly recommend people go back and look at them. I think they're really important. We're talking about kind of one of the ones we did, which is not about the sex, which is about sex trafficking. And we did that before kind of the Epstein revelations at least came out to me. Maybe other people knew it. But I think that's a really important topic. And also, it's not about the devil. So you see this real spiritual warfare taking place, I think, today. It's becoming more and more obvious. So these are very important topics and things to explore, especially from a Christian perspective. And this book itself is from a Christian perspective as well. And John lives in Colorado. He's the board president of Bring Our Valley Hope, a nonprofit that provides human trafficking education awareness and survivor support. So it's very important. His website is itisnotabout.com, and I will put a link to that and bring it up here in a minute. But there's a lot to talk about, a lot of hardships. People are going through tough times generally, I think. And there's things we can do to try to find gratitude and joy. And John's going to talk more about that. So John, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity, and it's great to be back.
Awesome. So for people who hadn't heard our earlier 2 episodes, maybe you can talk about your career, how you got started as a Christian author, maybe bring up the other books we talked about, and then leading up to the publication of It's Not About the Broken Road.
Sure. So most of my career was in professional finance and accounting, and essentially retired right around 2020. And I've always had a passion for writing, and always kind of dreamed of being an author, but I needed to get a real job when I graduated college. So I did that profession for many decades. And back in 2020, we had the George Floyd incident, and we really had a negativity towards police officers. And my daughter's a police officer. And so I really felt like police officers did not get a voice, especially during this time. So I wanted to write stories about real people, real kind of small town law enforcement. And that's what I did. And I did a book about that. And one of the guys I interviewed, I was asking a bunch of easy questions at the end. What would you do on vacation? What would you do if you won the lottery? And he just stopped stone cold and said, if I won the lottery, I'd quit my job and hunt down human traffickers. And that's when I kind of realized that I don't know anything about human trafficking. And if I don't, I'm guessing most of the American public doesn't know all that much. And that led me down a path to write It's Not About the Sex, which is different perspectives on human trafficking, which I consider to be one of the most evil things another person can do to to their fellow man or woman. And so I've tackled these serious subjects. I've also written about online predators, an abortion doctor who becomes a pro-life advocate, and spiritual warfare, really trying to get the insider's view of what happens and not the Hollywood view, if you will. And so I kind of pivoted to this book. It's Not About the Broken Road, because I really wanted to focus on not on the difficulty of people's lives, loss, grief, financial challenges, etc. But I wanted to focus on how do they get through that, and focus on people who've done that with their walk with God.
I mean, that's it today. There's a lot of grief, a lot of loss, a lot of depression, loneliness is an epidemic. There's a lot of pain, people alone in the world, and everybody's worried about their finances. So you use actual real stories. You you might have changed the name in the book or adapted some of these stories to the book, but you actually use real life situations to expand people's understanding of how people can adapt to these problems, right?
Yeah, so the way that I approach this is I had a common theme of finding joy and gratitude in these difficult circumstances and how they turn to God for support and being carried by God, if you will, during these difficulties. That's the theme. But I broke it down into three chapters of three real families and totally separate stories. So they've got, completely different path of life. Those are real people. Their picture is in the book. There are some other, I would say, secondary characters where some of the names were changed, but they're all based on interviews and testimony. And I work with these folks. So I go back to them and I show them what I've written up and they give their input. So it's a real collaboration. And the idea behind the storytelling is what I would call dramatized nonfiction. So what I mean by that is they're real people, real stories, and we create plots to demonstrate what they've done. They're like mini biographies, but there's action, there's dialogue, there's emotion. So it reads more like a fiction novel rather than sort of a dry biography.
Gotcha. And so you've broken down these three stories by themes, right? Different challenges that these families have.
Yeah, they're three different families, have nothing to do with each other, but they all went through difficulties and they all have their different way of leaning on God to be able to get through their circumstances. And we can go through some of those examples, but that's the theme. So what I'm hoping is that the reader is going to resonate with the people that are in the book. Everybody's had difficulties, everybody's have challenges. It won't be necessarily the same thing, but we've all struggled with, why do bad things happen to good people? We've all probably struggled with, a crisis of faith, if you will. So I think people will relate to that, and the stories tell how these particular families got through it and the details, and it's told in a way where it's got the dialogue, it's got the action. So it should feel like you're really reading kind of a fiction type of novel, but it's true stories.
Right, it's true stories. And so some of these themes are like families, children, those types of things. Like how break those down, like what you addressed, the issues you addressed.
Sure. So one of the stories is about Regan Perry, for example. And so he owns his own business, successful. Um, 2008 crisis comes along, and customers weren't paying him. He lands up having to file for bankruptcy. He loses the house, loses obviously the job and the income. Uh, but right after that, his wife gets ALS and gets sick, and lands up passing away. And so you've got this kind of lead up of who this family was, and how the wife was a very devoted Christian. He was, but his wife was sort of dragging him along, if you will, because he was just focused on the business and trying to be successful. Still had faith, but wasn't as serious as his wife. So so you go through this situation, and himself, family members are wondering, why does God take away this person who's so good, has served others so well, really faithful, but yet is being called home. And so w- that's part of that emotional struggle. And a scene in there is when his daughter expresses to Regan, the father, I'm really upset with God. I'm really mad at my situation. I've asked for healing for mom, but she landed up passing away, and she was really struggling with that. So she prayed about it and kind of thought about it some more, and heard God's voice telling her, I did answer your prayer. You got the gift of time. You got the opportunity to say goodbye to your mother and have sort of those last days with her. Not everybody gets that, of course. And that really gave her some peace with that. And so, I don't want to give away the entire story, but afterwards, Regan is called to serve others because his wife's dying request was bring people to Jesus. And when I heard that, in sort of the qualifying who I'm going to write about, the first thing I thought was, what would I do with that if that was a dying request that I received? And so he was reluctant at first, but then really jumped in. And I think the reader will see that plot of it wasn't easy to do that, and he lands up years later being able to find new love, if you will. So the story really has a happy ending with him getting married and meeting his new wife, who also has a very unique background as well. So it's kind of that ebb and flow of a real story that has ups and downs, and seeing the struggles that we've all had with the question of faith.
And some of these this one of the stories is really about also bringing a child into the world who maybe other people wouldn't have too, right?
Yeah. So the middle chapter is Dave and Julie Brannon. Takes place about 20 some years ago. They're having their second child. They go to the ultrasound and they're expecting, is it a boy or is it a girl? And instead, they get, there's a big problem. There's this child with severe physical anomalies. And the doctor just sort of immediately says, hey, we've got a clinic down the street that'll, take care of this quote problem. And they rejected that idea. But there was struggles of, well, this baby is only a couple of months old. There's a good chance that he may not make it to term. And so there's these months of the pregnancy and dealing with that and struggling with that. And what they saw is their family and their friends really came out to be supportive. And that was something that, they probably knew would happen, but it happened in even greater amount than they thought. And they were really grateful for this family support, and they prayed that their child would be able to be birthed alive, and that did happen. That prayer was answered, but the child only lived 4 hours after birth. But they were so grateful to meet their child, be a parent to their child, and their 4-hour-old child only knew one thing, and that was the love of family. And I think that's really a powerful testament to them. And honestly, kids grow up and then we become adults, we become jaded, but yet this child, all it ever knew was love.
Right. So that's a really interesting decision. So these people
Yeah.
are all the similarity in all of these families is the how they made their decision in very difficult circumstances. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, and it's always easy to have faith and when things are going great, right? But when things are not going great, that's truly when we need God the most. But that's sometimes when people get mad. They get upset with God. Well, why is this happening? Why me? Why did this have to happen that our baby wasn't healthy, for example? And so these are real life questions that even faithful Christians have. And you can see the ebb and flow of these individuals and how they dealt with it in their specific circumstances. And I think people will read that and see a little bit of themselves.
And these may not be these aren't uncommon situations. Like the choices are people making about their now with like the ability to do ultrasound and things like that about bringing some infants to full term, right?
Yeah, I mean, we know that there's lots of abortions that have been done historically around the world in this country. In my opinion, we have seen a reduction of people, serious Christianity. A lot more New Age religions or just atheism, secularism taking hold of our society. And as a result, the big picture, I think, is that life is not valued as it used to be. I mean, euthanasia is something that you're seeing, assisted suicide, etc. And so, the decision to have an abortion is not without consequence to that individual. It doesn't mean that it's over. It doesn't mean that the pain or the trauma is just going to go away. It's just now that your baby's been removed. And so I think when we have a society that doesn't value life as much, um, it means that they're wandering alone and they're not trying to get you know get the best strength that they can, which is going to come from God.
Right. So all these people are going through difficult times, and that's what got them through these challenges
Right.
is their reliance upon Almighty God, right?
Yeah. That's essentially the um, the theme of the book is that without it, God is always there with his hand outstretched, waiting for you to grab it. But we have free will. You can bring God into your life, or you can shut that door. And if that door shuts, he's not going to, break it down for you. You've got to be choosing to have that relationship. And so these people took and made that choice and ultimately became stronger and more at peace with those circumstances.
Right. So in these people, you also provide solutions at the end of these chapters on these people's challenges. There are other have not just your organization, but other organizations that are there to help with other people who've gone through the same circumstances. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah, there are. So, for example, in the Dave and Julie story with the baby, when they went through this, there really weren't organizations to help navigate that. And there are now, and I named two of them that people could go to that are nonprofits, and they're specifically set up to help people in those circumstances. And maybe you're not going through that, but maybe somebody who is, or can use that as a resource. And so all these people have websites where they're the reader can get a reference to go get more information, go get more support, or talk to somebody specifically.
And that is interesting because we are, like you said, we are kind of in an anti-natalist, anti like easy solution kind
Right.
of world environment now. Would you agree with that? Or cultural
Yeah,
environment?
I mean, I think the old liberal argument was abortion should be a safe, legal, and rare. That's got thrown out the door to shout your abortion. So I think it's being used much more as a birth control method than it was before. But it's still the elimination of a life, and I think people are seeing this as a problem that they need to solve. And I think it stems back to the life is not valued as much as it should be, because otherwise we'd be talking a lot more about taking some of those unwanted babies and putting them in the adoption situation.
Like into adoption, right? What's in the first kind of story, that was really about kind of somebody owning property, but also turning their kind of loss into something good, right? Wasn't that about a ranch that was
Yes.
turned? Yeah, can you talk about that?
Yeah. So the first chapter opens up with Greg and Elsa Verrier, and they essentially had good corporate jobs. They decided to adopt some children that some of those adopted kids were having some adjustment issues, and they took one of the kids to the to like an equine therapy type of horse ranch, and it really helped the kid who was very withdrawn and really was very skittish. And here's this 1,000-pound animal that could squash the kid essentially, but the child was not afraid at 8, 9 years old or so. So this kind of put a seed into them of two things. One, um, the benefits of a horse ranch, and two, there are other kids out there that maybe have problems or are disadvantaged or in some circumstance where they need some kind of assistance. So they ditched their corporate job and opened up a ranch in Colorado, and they really try to work primarily with kids, especially kids that maybe come from broken homes or have other health issues or other situations. They've worked with homeless kids, etc., and bring that uh, sort of Christ-centered message to the ranch. So there's several stories about kids in there who have had problems and how the ranch had affected them. And then the background with Greg and Elsa, there was a cancer journey there, so talking about some of that, as well as a parent with dementia. So all these things are kind of going in the background, and ultimately, their ranch, has been around for over a decade and has touched hundreds of lives uh, that they can have these experiences, these kids, and it's all for free. So it's all run by donations. It's called the 5110 Ranch, based on Psalm 5110, and just really, super nice people. Um, and there's nothing better than being able to help a kid touch a child's life that maybe really impacts them at 8, 9, 12 years old, etc., that ripple effects through the rest of their life.
It ripples through society. It really does. Like, so if there's these resources for children or people to help them get through these
Right.
difficult times, especially like a book of examples showing how people get through. On the subject of children, you wrote a book about predators. Like, I think that's a huge issue right now, is like predators online. Like, I keep hearing about
Yep.
764 and a lot of these really dark groups on the dark web. I mean, you thank God that there are ranches out there where kids can be outside playing instead of being on some website where they're prey to predators, right?
Yeah. Today's kids have grown up in a 100% online digital environment. In the old days, you always worried about, the weird guy in the white van with the puppy trying to get some kid on the edge of the park. Now that person sitting in their comfortable chair uh, in front of their computer, and every kid is online, and most teens see their own self-esteem as how many friends and followers that they have. The typical, especially popular suburban teenage girl has thousands of people in their social network. I guarantee there's more than one and probably dozens of predators that are on there. And these guys, their full-time activity is to get, luring kids to either meet with them for a physical encounter, to get them to send pictures, and or to extort them. Sextortion is one of the biggest problems of teens today, because if you look at FBI websites, Department of Homeland Security, kids can go in less than 24 hours from being approached by a predator and sending a explicit picture of themselves. Guaranteed bad things are going to happen when those things occur, and kids are not prepared, parents are not prepared to deal with that situation, and then you throw in artificial intelligence and it just makes it that much worse.
It magnifies it. I mean, it can happen so fast. The other thing is that some of
Yep.
these children are being lured off of benign sites. So they may be playing Fortnite or Roblox or something like that, not going to like really horrible,
Yeah,
messaging. Can you talk about that?
yeah, definitely. Those kinds of games, they're 1 or 2 clicks away from either getting into some kind of pornography site, or it launches into a private chat room with a predator. I mean, Roblox advertises play this game with meeting people all over the world, essentially playing the game with strangers. Well, if you're a predator and you want to try to trick a 9-year-old, well, where are you going to go? You're going to go to the most popular gaming sites, and Roblox, Fortnite, uh, several others that are out there. They're all that's where these predators hang out. And you're 1 or 2 clicks away. You get into a private chat room, and um, now it's just your kid and that predator. And so it's just way too easy. It's not so much the kids going to the dark web, or going looking for this stuff, but kids are, many times unsupervised, many times looking for some kind of affirmation, and the predators are master manipulators of figuring out what that is, playing on it, and then just getting them to give that person what they want. Uh, One of the people I interviewed for that book was Officer David Gomez, and one of the tips he gives parents is, if all of a sudden your kid gets a package from Amazon or has an Apple iTunes gift card, uh, where did they get that? And predators are notorious for giving gifts for benign pictures. Send me a picture of your feet and I'll give you $10. Well, what do you think happens when they want to get $20 or $50?
Yeah, no, it's like it becomes more, the manipulation takes place over time. And the outcomes are really terrible. Like these kids' lives are ruined if they survive. And it gets very dark. There's like scarring that they do. And so there was a guy who got busted in Texas, and he dedicated his whole life to abusing kids online, doing that on starting at benign sites. So what's strange too is that even me as like an investigative reporter, people like, well, come off of there, come on to my private chat. I'm like, no, I'm not.
Right.
I'm 57. I'm not going on private chat with you. I don't care. And the quest for followers and things like that is, it's even adults do that. It's like a status thing too. So it's, I mean, for kids too. So what do you recommend to parents who have young kids that are online all the time to keep them from harm?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing is really having those difficult conversations, having them early. It is an opportunity to tell your kid what your values are, because so much of it is tied into pornography, and whether that's sextortion, whether that's human trafficking. And the average age of a kid being exposed to pornography is about 11 years old. Your brain cannot process those things, and so if that becomes normalized, watching that, and they set it up to be addictive, if that becomes normalized, then what is that kid thinking as they go through adolescence? And so most of that, those explicit sites, they're becoming more violent, more degrading, uh, harming, mostly towards women and girls. So it really kind of warps the brain at an early age. You talk to any therapist right now, and they'll tell you that the most common cases that they're getting is related to activity online, whether that's bullying on social media, or whether that's they're they've been a victim of sending a picture or something like that.
Yeah, it's endemic. It's like really one of the most dangerous things that can happen to kids is being always online like that. And this whole porn culture has been a disaster really for society, for men and women, because it be normalizes all that stuff. The states are taking good choices to, banning it for under 18-year-olds and things like that. That's very smart. It's just terrible culture. I don't know. It's just bad for everybody because it takes away from the normal part of growing up. But like some of these people, 764 and these Telegram and some of these other groups are really dark, very dark, evil people, and people need to really be aware of that.
Yeah, yeah, they really are, and many times they're trying to extort that. So what happens with you're 13 or 14 years old? You're stressed out, you're embarrassed, you don't want your friends to find out what's happened, and just the mental anguish associated with that is huge. And so parents need to be aware of those things and have those conversations and be able to check their phone, things of that nature, because a lot of times what'll happen is somebody will send a picture of themselves and it gets out on a group chat, and so next thing you know it's to 20 other people. Now what a lot of people don't think about is, what if your kid is one of those 20 who didn't ask for any picture, but now all of a sudden you've got child sexual abuse material or child pornography, and is now on your kid's phone, and they didn't even ask to be included in this chat, and so all kinds of the ripple effect of this nefarious activity is just in some ways mind blowing.
Yeah, it's profound. It's a profound kind of new part of the tech culture that's out there. And is that what you recommend? Like, what do you recommend to parents to keep their kids away from this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, there are parental control software programs. You can get dumb phones, especially for little kids. And a dumb phone basically has no camera, no internet. It's pretty locked down for just being able to have a few people in the contacts for sure. Um, but being able, checking their checking their phone. I mean, kids are just notorious for circumventing parental controls, and then sometimes they get in over their head and they don't know what to do. So it's really critical for the parents to be able to have that open conversation, um, on one side, but also checking their phone, checking their laptop. What are their friends doing? And asking those questions. It's really being the involved parent, which, let's face it, not every parent is good out there. A lot of them um, are not watching what their kids are doing, and many of those are getting into trouble.
Right, John, we are at the 35-minute mark. Is this the best place to reach you? Is on your website? It's not about.com. Is that it?
Yeah, and in the contact section, there's a form to fill out. There's my email address. I love hearing uh, from readers about these topics.
All these books. Now, how many books do you have published now? Is it five?
This is the fifth one. Yeah.
The fifth now. Congratulations. Yeah. And it is available now on Amazon. Where do you recommend people check it out?
Yeah, best place is on Amazon. You can get the Kindle audio or the paperback.
Right. And it's right. So the Kindle's there, audiobook, paperback, available now. Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything I missed before we wrap it up?
Yeah, I think one of the oldest questions that we have is, why do bad things happen to good people? And part of that is perspective. We have blessings, we have burdens in life, but sometimes those things that might look like burdens can be blessings at a later point. One of the stories is a cancer journey with Elsa, and her perspective now is, it was a blessing to get cancer, and not everybody's going to say that, right? And I think reading how she came to that conclusion is really interesting and can be inspiring, because something like a medical emergency, that happens pretty much in every family to somebody, if not yourself. So I think, trying to get some of those questions answered through the storytelling is what I'm really trying to do, and I hope people will uh, check out the book.
Yeah, check out the book. Check out his other books and check out our other interviews we covered. It's not about the sex trafficking. It's just as important as this online abuse culture. And then it's not about the devil. But today we talked about his most recent book. The full title is It's Not About the Broken Road, True Stories About Finding Gratitude and Joy in Life's Most Difficult Moments. And the author again is John DiGirolamo, DiGirolamo. DiGirolamo, and the website is itsnotabout.com.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming on. Appreciate it. All right, stay there. I think